One moment, folks. Let me just set up the Telegram stream and then the Facebook. Get the Facebook going, and then we can begin. We'll be live again. Sorry about that, folks. We had the wrong description on Streamlabs, so for some of the platforms like X, it had the incorrect description for the title and everything else. So we had to fix that. Excuse me. So let me just get the Telegram going and Facebook, and then we'll begin. Okay. And Facebook. And we are live. All right, welcome, folks. We have a big breaking news today. We've got a possible second shooter evidence for the Charlie Kirk shooting based on the ballistic analysis and other data, as well as the fact that there's no exit wound as well. So we have updated evidence that seems to indicate there could have been a second shooter. Also, we have the FBI, leaked FBI memo from an after-action report from January 6th proves that 275 plus plainclothes agents were in the crowd that day and potential instigators. And we also have Director Comey, or former FBI director, or former Director James Comey getting indicted, as well as some interesting tie-ins relating to Epstein and a theory that ties into the second shooter theory for Charlie Kirk. So we have some good stuff, some really big stories. Oh, and Google also admitted recently that it censored people during the Biden administration under pressure from them. So that's also big news. Yeah. So with that being said, let's begin. I hope everybody's able to join us. Let me get this first story here. And get the time code line to just right up, and then we'll get into it. So this is going to be some evidence ballistically wise on the Charlie Kirk shooting, and we're going to be watching. Here we go.
Yeah. Go forward, Stephen. Wait, this isn't in here.
Here we go. All right, folks.
Right here. Yep, that would have been a good shooting spot. All right, so this is the alleged shooting position here. You can see they've got some evidence tags right there. Those are supposed to be elbow and knee indentations. As we can see, maybe it's pretty reasonable. I don't know what that's almost like you can see 4 knuckles there or something, unless he was barefoot. But that's the alleged shooting spot. So if we look at this, there's clearly an angle down to where Charlie was sitting right there under that tent. So that's the story that they have. This was the shooter, was Tyler Robinson. He was sitting here, lone gunman with a 30-06, shooting from that position right there. Now, I put this one in so that we can see there's this little promontory. That helps us visually find this place again. So just to this side, the building side of this promontory over here, we would see those 4 indents and the crime scene tape and the evidence tags. So an alleged shooter was visible. You saw in the earlier video from the drone that they said, oh, here's the position that a video of the alleged shooter was taken. Again, this is that promontory prow that we just pointed out, and there is indeed some sort of a body sitting there. Now, just have to wonder, why weren't any of Charlie's teams tasked with binoculars or a drone? That would be a question for his security team to think this through. I don't understand how you do not have drones at any of these events at this point, just as a matter of course, but that's me. If we measure this out, the actual distance from that, here's that promontory from above, here's the alleged shooter's position, it's about 140 yards. It's 139 yards if you measure it on Google, but of course it's measuring the flat, and we have to measure the hypotenuse because the shooter was up in the air. Adds about a yard, so not a big deal. So 140 yards from the alleged shooter's position to Charlie's position. Now that matters because if we knew the rounds, if we knew the actual rounds that were used, if they would just show us a picture of the 2 unspent rounds plus the head cases, they're called, of the 3 cartridges, including the spent one they found in that rifle. It was allegedly the cartridge that was used to execute, murder Charlie Kirk. If we could see the head stamps are all the same and we could actually see what these bullets were, now we can perform some very precise calculations because we know the barrel length of the gun, we know the exact type of ammo. They have all very, very carefully characterized velocities and all that other stuff. So we would be able to tell within a millisecond or two, do we have the right answer? The fact that they've not released that information so far, a little bit of a yellow flag, if not a red flag for me at this stage. The other thing we should note, though, is that if this person was shooting square, they would be shooting straight this way, a little bit to Charlie's left. So there was about 9 degrees off axis. This would be on axis. A little bit 9 degrees off axis. Not a lot, but significant, and I'll show you how that comes into play a little bit later. So if they were shooting, if the shooter was dead in front of Charlie, right, shooting straight on, then you would expect any bullet wound you would see to travel straight through. But if you're off axis a little bit, then what happens is that bullet's going to travel off axis too, through, in this case, his neck or any other shooting spot. So just want to be clear about that. That's the setup of the scene. We're about 9 degrees off axis and about 9 degrees down sloping as well. Here you can see the 9 degrees off axis. Here's how I measure these sorts of things. Charlie was facing dead forward, which is very helpful in a very square setting, so we could get this pretty precise. Put a protractor on there, and you can see the shooter's position from a shot taken straight above, which is important. Gets us about 9 degrees off axis, 9 degrees down sloping. You know what? Let's call it 10 and 10, just to make it easy. Let's round up. 10 and 10. 10 degrees down sloping, 10 degrees off axis. Now we can talk about the kill shot. This is where I think we can conclusively prove that Tyler Robinson, the alleged shooter, did not take the shot that landed in Charlie Kirk's neck. I can't guarantee he didn't take a shot. I just can guarantee that the shot he took wasn't the one that killed him. And here's why. So again, we have a 10-10 situation here. 10 degrees off axis, which you can see a little here. 10 degrees down sloping. You can also appreciate that there's a downslope here. And so here's how that plays in. When we take that 10 degree downslope and take our magic protractor and put it on here, this is about how that bullet would have traveled through Charlie Kirk's body. So it wouldn't have come out, we wouldn't expect it to come straight out the back of the neck in this case, because he was a little bit slumped. He was had a little bit like this, yep. And that would have meant the bullet would have traveled roughly hitting right here on the front of his throat about there, and it would have traveled a little bit down and come out in between his neck and his scapula, just down to the back a little bit. Here's the shot itself. We can see it was off the midline. It was a lot of people confused, myself included, for a while, because it looks a lot more like an exit wound than an entrance wound, but we can explain that now with the piece that comes a little bit later, why it has that appearance. Again, if this was coming down at a 10 degree angle and we place this on this mock-up of a human, we would see it's coming in somewhere between the C6 and the C7 vertebrae at that sort of level on the neckline, but it would have exited down here between C7 and the T1. Okay, that's the thoracic 1 vertebrae. So somewhere in this zone is where we would have anticipated, roughly it would have exited from a lateral height standpoint. We can also tell that this is from the shot that everybody saw from up front. I'm not going to show any blood or gore in here, but this is actually just 4 frames. So if frame 0 is before he gets shot, he's shot. Frame 2, frame 3, frame 4. This is frames 3 and 4. We can already see him in this pugilist pose. That's where his hand is already curled like this. That means that he's had some kind of very traumatic injury to the midbrain level. It was an instant death. So after traumatic brain injury, it's called decorticate posturing. We also call it the pugilist pose, because people, if they fall back and hit their head and they get really harmed, they'll come up in what looks like a boxing pose, but it's not like this. Their hands are actually usually flexed in a little. So this is an abnormal involuntary posture characterized by rigid extension of the legs, flexion of the arms toward the chest with clenched fists, and inward rotation of the wrists, often resembling a defensive boxing stance. It typically indicates severe damage to the cerebral hemispheres or midbrain, is a sign of a poor prognosis. As soon as I saw this that the day of the shooting, when he tipped and went over like that with that decorticate posturing, I knew that it was a very bad situation for him, very unlikely to be survived. But this also gives us some data we're going to have to work with. Again, I tell you, we work with actual facts. The fact is that we have to account now for a very violent midbrain injury, something that happened so fast that just 1/10 of a second after the shot happened, 4 frames later, right? If this is 30 frames per second, by the third frame here, which is 1/10 of a second, it's already like that was as instant a response as you could possibly have, right? And for people who are out there thinking, oh, this could have been Hollywood and it could have been faked, it's impossible to fake something that quickly, that fast. And there it was. So then he just tipped up and over and dropped the mic and all of that. But we now have to account for a very violent insult to the midbrain or lower brainstem area. So that's part of the deal. It can't have been, for example, a very low speed pistol round shot from a concealed palm thing, a 32 caliber or something like that. It doesn't have the force necessary to cause a little puncture here, rattle around in there, and cause this kind of damage. We need something that operates at an extremely high rate of speed. So this is part of our clue set. This is why it was confusing, because this is a tan deer hide. That's what an entrance wound looks like from a 30 caliber bullet. I mean, it's like practically nothing, right? The exit wound, obviously much, much bigger and more ragged and all of that. And so here you can see passing through a roughly 12-inch deer, though, a high velocity round comes in, makes a little puncture, and leaves with a big hole and goes right through a deer. And there's a lot of stuff in a deer compared to a human neck. Now, if it was Tyler Robinson's shooting position, remember, he had a 10-degree downslope. So putting this as accurately as I could where I think that hole was in his neck, again, not middle, off to the side a little bit. So again, we're just looking at a side view, so we can't tell where it is, where that bullet hole is positioned laterally in this whole thing. But just from this position here, this would have been a 10-degree downslope, and that bullet should have come and passed about like that. Now, it's possible that I've got it misplaced a little, and the hole's a little lower, and we can't really tell because its head's jerked back. It's possible, could theoretically have hit the first, maybe the second rib, in which case that bullet could possibly have been deflected. We'll get into bullet deflection more later, but here's the thing. Bullets are not deflected unless they hit something that's pretty hard. And I've got the data for that, and I'll show you what that actually means. From above, stylistically here again, it was 10 degrees downslope, but also 10 degrees, again, off axis. So off axis with the hole, this is the head, the neck would be this blue dotted line. I've placed the dot about where I would expect that wound would have been, put the 10-degree off axis onto this, and you see that it can't hit the spinal column, that the solid bones that exist out there in the neck, to bounce off of those and go down into his body cavity. It's just impossible. This shot is passing entirely through soft neck tissue. A 30-06 that hits there with that degree of angle is just going to blow out the back of the neck virtually every time. I mean, never say never, I guess, but the odds are too ridiculously low to even consider this as a reasonable hypothesis. The chance of that neck stopping or deflecting that bullet in just that amount of time, impossible. Now, I'll get into this a little more later, but the base explanation, so we can move on for those of you who are having some objections here, is that bullets do get deflected. I could expect this bullet to get deflected by his neck, but a bullet deflects a little bit at the beginning, and it takes, 100 yards later, it didn't hit where you meant for it to hit. But it doesn't deflect instantly. Like, hunters don't shoot and hit a twig and the bullet hits the dirt right under the twig. It gets knocked off course a little bit, and 100 yards later, you miss what you're aiming at because it does get deflected. I think people confuse what deflection really means. It doesn't mean the bullet instantly changes direction. It means it gets knocked off course. A bullet has a vector of travel with an immense amount of force. That's why they do the damage they do. That's why they kill. And that vector is along a very, very straight line. To get it to come off of that line, you have to have an equal and opposite force. This is Newtonian physics. It's impossible for a bullet to have thousands of foot-pounds of pressure and be deflected by just a pound of stuff and go an entirely different direction in just a few inches. Well, that's what a human neck is. That neck shot there, I would estimate it's about 5 inches of material that is involved. As well, time for a quick little anatomy lesson here. This is these are vertebra. This is the fourth cervical vertebra. Here's the seventh. This is the one we're interested in potentially. And notice it has a body, which is pretty solid bone here, right? And, here's the foramen, the spinal column heads down that thing. Then you have these little tiny things on the side, which are called tubercles. They're really insignificant. These are not elk bones, man of steel bones. These little anterior, posterior tubercles, these are the little wings out the side. They are very insignificant bones, right? The kind that your dog would just sort of chew up and, it'd be gone. And that comes into play because what we have to consider about these is that when we're looking at a cross section of a human neck, the whole thing's upside down because I had to rotate it so that we're looking at, this would be the front of the body. I wanted to make sure that we're all maintained orientation. So I flipped the whole picture over. That's why all those words appear upside down to you. Here's about where that neck wound would have been on Charlie. Again, it was off the midline, just a little closer to the side than the midline, but I put this in the midline anyway. If we take a 10-degree angle through his neck, you will notice we barely even clip. This is bone material right here. We barely even clip the tubercle, which again is a completely insignificant bone. There's not a chance in the world that that bone caught that bullet and sent it down into his body if it clipped that. Otherwise, this is the exact path we would expect. And again, this is only maybe, 5, maybe 6 inches of material here. Almost all of it just muscle. Nothing hard. There's really nothing that, this is as close as you can get. They have this stuff called ballistic gel, which hunters and aficionados of bullets and ballistics use to simulate a body, right? Because it has about this right density. It's a gel. And when you shoot into the gel, it's kind of like, this is almost a perfect approximation of shooting into ballistic gel because there's no bones here. There's nothing to interfere with what's going on. Now, if the round had passed straight through, it would have caused a huge rupture in the back, probably. It would have still caused immediate massive damage from the shock wave of the bullet, as well as the physical damage of the bullet traversing that tissue. So there's two ways that high-speed rounds actually cause damage. One is just the physical damage caused by the bullet making a hole through a body. But even more importantly, usually, is this shock wave that happens because the bullet is traveling at supersonic speeds, and it's traveling at a speed faster than water can move out of the way. And since water, which is a body, is not compressible, that water has to do something and go out of the way. So we're going to take a look at that real quick.
Okay. So now, that's the first segment. Now we have a few we're going to get into. We got another one coming up, but go ahead and just talk on that briefly, Robin, for our guest while I get the next time code lined up. Initial thoughts.
There's been tremendous speculation about this whole story, and there's been a few different rabbit holes that I've gone down trying to figure out what really happened, because almost inevitably there are errors made, but even more importantly, there's also other narratives that have to be considered when you have someone who's as high a profile as Charlie Kirk was. And those other narratives come into play because it's never as simple as one might think. And I think the evidence that we found, that Stephen and I have uncovered, mostly Stephen, is that there is a very viable other theory besides that Tyler Robinson took this shot that killed Charlie Kirk. Tyler Robinson has said he didn't do it, but of course that's probably to be expected, whether he did it or not. But then when you start looking into the veracity of the evidence, and this is physics, this is a science, this is the science of what bullets do, this is a science of how angles work. So this is a fascinating story, and I want to pursue it and see where this goes, because it's really interesting when you get a little deeper in here.
Yep. All right. Here's the next segment.
Isn't an exact proxy for big game, it does provide a repeatable medium through which to test various bullets and ammo against each other. After the shots, we'll examine bullet expansion, weight retention, penetration,
More
and
details.
velocity. My goal is to provide hunters like you and I with the most objective information possible to help us make the best choice for our particular hunting situation. So let's go ahead and shoot this stuff before the sun gets brighter or the wind gets stronger.
Watch this. Ooh. So the bullet traveled in from that
And we're
side.
down at the blocks after the first shot with a Norma 150 grain whitetail ammo. We have a good wound cavity, relatively shallow, at least compared to some of the...
Okay. So first up, notice what we're seeing here. This is the bullet way out here, and he's going to tell us how far it penetrated. This would have been about the width of Charlie's neck right here. This would have been the entrance wound, a little tiny thing. This would have been the size of the exit wound, more or less. Some big raggedy thing. And again, this penetration by the bullet causes some damage, just because it's like a hole puncher. It punches a hole through tissue that can, traverse nerves, blood vessels, cause mechanical damage. But the real damage is actually caused by this giant shock wave that happens in here as the bullet comes in with approximately 2,000 foot-pounds of energy and dumps that into this gel, which is, again, it's a solid substance in the sense that it is water held in a spot, which is a lot like a human body. And so when that 2,000 foot-pounds of energy comes in, where does it go? It doesn't just magically dissipate. It has to go somewhere, and that's a big part of the story we're telling here today. All right, let's see what the penetration here was.
The heavier 30-06 ammo that I fired. Coming on back, we have the bullet captured right there, nice and pretty. And we got the tape measure set up. It looks like our penetration for this first shot is right about 19 3/4 inches.
That was the second one. And then we got another one. Go ahead.
So how is there, if young Tyler took this shot, then physics tells us that there would have to be an exit wound because he didn't have an angle that would give him a shot that would take it down into the chest cavity, and there's nothing to stop the bullet except a little feather light bone on the edge of the vertebra in the neck. And it wouldn't be enough to stop a bullet. It might deflect it, but it wouldn't deflect, it wouldn't bounce off and go down or deflect it down into the body. It's at the back of the body. It would hit that and be deflected in its path, but it would come out and there would be an exit wound, and it would be a large exit wound for the reasons that we've already seen. Let's look at some more.
Here they are shooting. This is a much less energetic round than the 30-06. This is called a 300 blackout. They're shooting the 300 blackout. So what you're about to see is an energetic event that is less violent than what would happen if even the lightest 30-06 round was used, but it still is very instructive. And they did a great job shooting this with an ultra high speed camera. And it looks like this. That's what happens when a bullet, oh, you see that flash of the light from the recovery when it collapses back on itself. Let's watch that again. Bullet is fired. Boom. Okay. Now they have a camera here running at least 10,000 frames per second. I think this one's actually operating probably at a lot higher rate, but that's what it looks like when a bullet strikes. All that water has to go somewhere. That's a temporary cavitation. You get this huge expansion because all of the energy of the bullet has to be dumped somewhere.
All right, that was the third clip. We got two more and another video. And then go ahead.
One of the rabbit holes that I went down, there was a popular podcaster that showed evidence that seemed to suggest that Charlie had an exploding mic, that it was an inside job, and that his mic was here and it went in, and his shirt goes. And when I saw that, I didn't at the time, the broadcaster was speaking and saying, "This is what caused it." You can see report from the microphone as there's an explosion, and you can see the effects on his shirt of the explosion. And but when I was reviewing this with Stephen, he was saying, no, I disagree. And so he went and ferreted out the evidence, and that theory is pretty well debunked once you understand what actually happened, which is what we're going to be getting into.
All right, so here we go.
Zero chance a bullet traveling this path right here was going to be stopped by a human neck. Again, this is what it looks like even with a 300 blackout, a much less energetic round. A 30-06 would have been just way more larger of a cavitation event. But even with this, you can see it penetrates really far into the gel. Look how far it goes. This is traveling about 14 inches. 14 inches. Not a chance in the world the neck stopped a 30-06 round at that angle. Just wasn't going to happen. So here's that high-speed cavitation event. So what I did here was, in the frame right before Charlie is shot, I just drew a reference diagram, a reference freehand little blue line there. This is the same line copy-pasted into exactly the same position because I made sure that you can see here's where the U's are, see where I cut off the F up here, see where the top is. Like I made these frames line up really well. So what you can see easily is Charlie's neck is now much outside of the line on the back, way outside of the line on the front. Now I can begin to explain the so-called exit wound because this little tiny thing went in and it should have made a little tiny entrance wound if it went through and through. It didn't. This round entered, dumped all of its energy into Charlie's body, and it was in the upper body cavity, and you can see his neck expand and his whole upper chest expand. This explains his necklace, which flew off the back of his head. That clasp was broken because it just got pulled so fast, it must have broken that chain and throw it around the neck. So we can explain all of that now. Okay. This is full evidence that he had a high energy, a high speed round entered his body and dumped all of its energy into his body. So this is an important clue because it tells us a lot about where the shooter must have been, and it wasn't where Tyler Robinson was. Can't have been. It just doesn't pan out. By the way, people saying that this is his mic, that it exploded. In almost all the other things, you see this mic in all the shirt moving violently up into Charlie's left, our right. You can see here at the moment of first impact, it's hardly moved at all yet, right? Why is that? Well, because his body is just now expanding and pulling, and because his body puffed and pulled with that cavitation event, that's what actually threw his shirt, grabbed the lapel mic as part of the shirt. All of that stuff that we saw where everything threw up tells me that his body swelled up a lot more on the left side where it pulled the shirt up that direction. But this magic shot right here, this exact frame rate caught it at exactly this moment where we see the cavitation event, that first 1,000th of a second, but it hasn't been enough time to transfer that energy to see all of this stuff travel up this way. So it answers a whole lot of questions for us. So I just put together a little clip here we're going to watch back and forth so you can watch this event enough times to maybe settle it in your head as well. Before, after. Before, after. Just pick a spot to look at, maybe this side, and just watch the neck expand. Watch the neck expand, particularly here where he was shot on this side. You can see there's a huge output bulging right here from that overpressure event. That's what grabbed the shirt and threw it. That's why everything travels up that direction. That is what a severe overpressure cavitation event looks like. And if we didn't have this particular video, I wouldn't be able to be as conclusive as I have been about it, but now I've seen exactly what it is. By the way, not a chance in the world these guns could have caused those physics. They just don't have the pressure capabilities. They do not have the foot-pounds of force. This one, I think, shoots a 38, a 380. Some of them shoot an actual 38. This little thing shoots a 32 caliber thing. Somebody saw somebody with a skull tin in their back pocket, thought, could it be this? There's not a chance in the world these little weapons could have caused this sort of an overpressure event. Not a chance. Couldn't have happened.
Okay. One more before we go to we got a couple more, two more clips. No, three more clips. Let me get to the next segment. Go ahead and give your
No,
thoughts on what we just watched.
I think he's doing such an excellent job of of bringing us all to a scientific understanding, and really, that's where our foundations have to be. It's
A
There's
possibility.
plenty of conspiracy theories about who and why, but the how is something that scientifically we're exploring to understand what happened, what circumstance was actually provoked by all of the whys. And the whys is a whole nother discussion, but this is the clearest exposition of the science that shows how he died, what happened when he was shot, and it's hard to refute. So let's watch some more.
Now we're going to have to, so given this.
Oh, and we're going to show a video here upcoming right after this segment that shows an angle from behind into stage right of so a camera angle from behind, so we get to see when it happens from a behind angle, and it clearly shows there is no blood splatter, no exit wound on the back, like we would expect. Therefore, this has to be a different shooting angle, and that's where this comes into play.
We have conclusive evidence that Charlie was shot with a high-speed round, and it dumped all of its energy into his body. So now we have some physics to work with, and we're going to have to solve for some shooting angles that could match the physics we now have. Now, again, Colvett says down here that the coroner recovered the bullet. Okay? He said, in the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. So the bullet implies that there was enough of a bullet left that there was an actual bullet. If it's the whole bullet and it's not fragmented, I'm going to have other questions. And we're going to have to look at that bullet very, very carefully and see what it was. Again, if we just had some basic information, what were the cartridges actually used? Was there a bullet recovered? Can we see a picture of that bullet? What did it weigh? We will know a lot of things at that point in time. But they're going to, of course, withhold all of that evidence from us just because. By the way, we did just get this morning and heard this.
So I did do the request. They emailed me back. He did not go in for an autopsy. The death certificate was signed by the doctor at the hospital.
What?
Oh, okay. Can you?
What?
He did not go in for an autopsy. The death certificate was signed by the doctor at the hospital.
What?
Okay. Can you just do a?
That's the dispatcher, Utah dispatcher. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but so now we have a conflict here. Did he go in? Was there a coroner? Coroner would typically be the person conducting an inquest. By law in Utah, you have to conduct an autopsy in a murder. They said maybe the dispatcher had it wrong. I certainly hope this is an error. Obviously, when you have one of the most significant political assassinations of your lifetime, you conduct an autopsy. If they didn't, yellow flags, red flags are going to go up again, big time.
So
now, Candace Owens said that she got footage from this, also from Andrew Colvett here. Let me see. Yeah, got footage from this camera. I would very much like to see that camera. I'm also going to put out a call here to TPUSA to release the other camera that was from the front, that footage as well. And we're going to need the microphone recordings from Charlie's mics. That will solve a lot. We'll be able to do some crack boom analysis. We'll be able to see things. We can resolve a lot. If they're interested, that is.
Okay, we went a little further than we were supposed to. But getting on that, I'm gonna show some video footage from behind, which is right here, folks. When it happens, and it shows clearly there's no exit wound and no blood splatter in the back. So
There's the fact.
I'm gonna play it again. No exit wound. His clothes would have been bloodied if it came out the back. So now we're having to operate with the theory that it must not have.
Now you can see the shirt in the
Right.
back. Right there. Puffs.
Yet that was impact.
Yeah.
But it was so quickly. So yeah. There's that. And then we have one more segment after that that goes into the what we think the angle came from. But go ahead and talk on that real quick for while I get this last segment up.
Well, um, it's it's a bizarre thing to think that a guy with a high-powered rifle it is shooting around through the neck of an individual, which, as he's clearly said, this is soft tissue. The whole thing is soft tissue. You have the spine in the back. The rest of it is muscle. There's some tendons, there's some muscle, but there's nothing that is going to stop a bullet unless you get down into the body where the bone is, uh, especially because we know the angle was such that if the entrance wound is here, it could only come out the right above the shoulder in the back. Now we see the swelling, but there's no exit wound, and that's just not realistic. I mean, I'm not really a gun guy. I haven't really, haven't done very much hunting, and I don't know a lot about guns, but this appears to me, this just a layman that doesn't know a lot about guns, but he's going over the physics of it. He's showing the evidence. He's got the gel
This guy
that's
actually does
designed.
know about guns. He said so earlier in the video, but you
Yeah.
and me don't know so much about
This,
guns.
this
But it
gel
explains,
block
I do know about
is,
physics.
the gel blocks that they're shooting
Yeah.
into is designed to be the weight, consistency, and density of a human body. That's what it's designed for, and
Yeah.
that's how a forensic expert will analyze the path of a bullet and analyze what happens when a bullet hits. So the things that we're seeing in this gel is kind of an X-ray vision into what's happening inside the body of a human being that gets hit by something like
Yeah.
that. And it's pretty damned hard to refute.
Now we're going to get into the proposed angle of where he thinks the shot actually came from, which would line up with the no exit wound, based on the video evidence from the back that we just saw. And then I'm gonna after we finish playing this, I'm gonna actually get into another video from O'Keefe Media that just dropped 3 days ago regarding Epstein, and I'll let you guys decide. But I think it. If this is the case, and Tyler Robinson was a patsy, then the only other explanation that we can think of that would work, that would make sense, would be Mossad and CIA. This video is about to go into that, and I think it will. I think that explains a lot and ties a lot into this as well. So that's going to be next.
Not really going to happen. Here's a couple other spots that we have to consider. So this is the area. Charlie's tent would have been right here, facing this way, because this is, I believe, is right up axis. This thing confused me for a while. I thought they were stairs on the first things I was watching. It's a waterfall feature. And so this helps guide us where we are. Again, this is the promontory where that video was shot from over here. There's a post right here. We're going to have to keep an eye on all these things, because as we speculate about if we were conducting an investigation, where would we look very, very carefully? There is a shooting angle that's right through between these two trees, comes right down the waterfall. And again, that waterfall would have pointed right at Charlie's tent. So this is a potential shooting spot here. And guess what? If you're in that spot, the measured angle that would have come in at about 43 degrees, and it's a 20-degree downslope angle because the building is closer. It's almost as high as the other shooting position, but that's much further back, so that lowers the angle. And so those are the measurements we got. About a 43-degree off-axis angle, 43 degrees, coming in 43 instead of not 9, 43. And also 20 degrees, let's put it this way, 20 degrees instead of 10. Now we're at an angle where there's a chance that thing's going to come straight into the body. Now it really honestly has a chance of doing that from that shooting position. So that's where I would have looked at. A 20-degree angle here, this puts it, as you can see here, this is set at 20 degrees. Now this thing's coming much further down into the body. And as well, once you're at a 20-degree angle, you start to hit these bones guaranteed. The rib bones, if you're off axis, but also you start to hit the center of the spinal column. And at a 43-degree angle, that puts that bullet coming in first thing it's going to encounter is the center mass of the thoracic vertebrae. If it's gone that low, maybe C7, but I think it might have hit T1. Best guess. Of course, some autopsy photos and some x-rays would help us resolve all of this pronto. And we don't have access to any of that yet. Also, this comports with something else. Notice if we come across here, we do still transect the jugular, also the carotid. This is a little bit of a gruesome detail, but I think it's important. When Charlie slumped over, if you saw this blood, but it sort of slumped out. And it also took a second or two for that to happen. Not a second or two, but about a half a second to us. There was a little gap between him having this hole, right, in his neck, and starting to slump, and then this blood sort of spilling out. It wasn't spurting out. So that tells me that his heart was stopped at that point in time. Because if you transect the carotid and the heart is pumping, very high pressure, it's pretty obvious. If you haven't seen it, it's not forgettable. So when people have arterial damage and their heart is pumping, you get a lot of spurting. His arterial pressure was already at 0. There was no spurting. So what did we see? We saw this little gap, the hole shows up, a little gap, and then we saw this sort of blood just sort of slump out. That was his, probably a combination of both the jugular or the venous blood, maybe even some of his carotid artery, maybe. But what we saw is it slumping out. And my explanation is that huge overpressure shock, it pushed the blood away, and then it just sort of had to come back and slump out. So Charlie was already dead with mechanical damage to the heart, I'm going to guess here, because even if you decapitate somebody on a guillotine, the heart's going to pump for a little while, because that's how the heart is. It just doesn't give up the ghost that easily. So his heart had stopped. How did his heart stop? His heart stopped because that bullet dumped down into his chest cavity and probably caused a lot of mechanical damage, as well as obviously all the neuronal damage and all that other stuff. So this fits very, very well with this. We need a new shooting angle that can account for what we're seeing. Now, what's interesting is there was this great video taken from the side. Thank you to the person who sent that to me. I got it off your Google Drive. Really appreciate it. High quality. I trust this video a lot. This one was off to the side. Charlie's left. If Charlie's facing forward, stage left. They're over here. They're facing this way. This is the promontory. This is that other video camera we're looking at. But this is about 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds after the shot has been taken. Look at this guy. I know eyewitnesses can be a little iffy, but this guy is pointing, and he's pointing right along the axis, more or less, of this promontory axis, right? It has a face. He's pointing along. And hey, look at this guy. We got cowboy hat guy here too. Yep. They're both sitting here looking in a certain direction. If I place this guy, he's sitting right about at the top. These are all these tiers of concrete and grass and concrete and grass, concrete and grass. This guy is just off of the promontory prow, and he's just a little bit off this side of it. And that places him. There's the promontory prow. There he is right there. He's pointing here. He's pointing somewhere up on this building. He's not pointing this way, which is where the alleged shooter would have been. He's clearly not pointing that way. He's pointing here. And cowboy hat guy is like doing the same thing. He's like, they're both looking at the same spot. I would want to talk to red shirt guy if I was investigating this. Red shirt guy would, I think, have some of the most most of these people, a lot of, pandemonium and screaming and usual stuff going on. But this guy, he just stands up, hands in his pocket, and he's like, right there. So maybe that's meaningful, maybe not. So that's red shirt guy, and also cowboy hat guy. He's one lower down, looking in the same exact direction. This is where I would be looking, because these are the shooting positions that actually match the physics of what we see in that frame, and the fact that Charlie has the bullet in his body, the fact that it's nearly impossible to consider that a 10-degree angle, 10-degree downslope, 30-06 is going to be stopped by a human neck or deviated within those first few inches so it can actually make it down into the body. The request that this 30-06 hits soft neck tissue. I mean, if it had hit a collarbone, I'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to have to guess a little. It hits the softest part of the human body. This is the softest part. I mean, this is just, there's nothing going on here, right? It's like a little bit of cartilage, some veins, a lot of muscle, but that's about it. And that it entered here, and that within a few inches, because remember, it can't have traveled all 6 inches and then bounced back in the body. It would have had to have deflected within the first 2 to 3 inches, tops, to go down into the body cavity. You saw the ballistic gels with me. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. There's not a single example where you can shoot ballistic gel and you see the bullet immediately within an inch or two take a really hard turn. The reason for that, 2,000 foot-pounds of force traveling along a single vector is not easily dissuaded that it should go in a whole new direction. That's just physics. I'm not going to suspend my physics here. I didn't do it on 9/11. I just refuse. Physics is what it is. So best guess for me, though, is this is where I would be looking very, very carefully. That should be scoured very, very carefully for clues right there, because that matches everything almost perfectly. Again, that's just fitting the data that we have at this point in time.
Okay, so there's that. And then we also have a video of from before, during, and after the shooting from one of the balconies on that college campus. It'll give us a good aerial view to maybe look for any anomalies on the roof, I think, right after the event coming up right now. So let me get that lined up real quick. Here we go. It's about 5 minutes long, but it's a it has good coverage of all the balcony areas and the whole courtyard at UVU. And maybe gives a possibility to actually spot something. And then we'll get into the O'Keefe media leak of the whole DOJ, the whole Epstein thing next after that. And I'll tie it all together, what I think's going on. So this is from the same balcony where the camera was taken, the one that's on the corner. That's the tent right down there. Now, see that little corner right there? That's the one of the structures on the courtyard that's lined up with the waterfall.
Okay, there they both are, it looks like.
So this is the theory where he was thinking the angle was coming from. This little corner right here behind. So if you line it up, that would be the starting point on the tip of the roof. If he was going to do the downward angle like he's suggesting, which makes more sense since there's no exit wound.
USA! USA!
Are they like restricting you guys up here or what?
Nah, it's too crowded.
It's just there's just so much.
Before we had a flag and we.
Holy.
Same spot right here, but from the opposite side that we just saw.
You guys okay?
And then it would have gone straight down. The angle would have been, but since the actual tent was in the bottom of the courtyard, at the bottom of the steps, it makes sense that it would have actually been more of a down angle because of that, based on the trajectory from the potential shot to the tent. And how far it went down based on what he was saying.
Okay, love you. Be safe. Okay, be safe. Bye.
I wish we had better footage of that corner. Maybe able to see something. We got.
Apparently, there's been a shooting. I don't know who's been shot.
Oh shit!
We are here live at Utah Valley State University. I don't know.
So yeah, this is on the balcony on the side of where
Above
above the tent.
yeah,
No.
you can see the front edge of the tent.
That was
Yeah.
fireworks, to be honest, but.
How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
Were you able to see anything that happened?
I was standing right here interviewing people. Hang on. Charlie Kirk got shot. Charlie Kirk has been shot in the neck. This is unconfirmed. This is for my son who was down there right in front of Charlie Kirk. We're going to go down there and see neck.
Okay, we don't need to go through the whole thing. I just wanted to show where we respect that the angle came from, and then I got one more Google Maps link I got that's from inside the courtyard that we can show and point to where that spot potentially would have been from there, and then we're going to do the Epstein video from O'Keefe Media. This is on Google Maps, and we have it in the links or in the sources in the description of the lives, folks. For X, we'll be posting those sources after the live. So this is where the pinpoint or the top of the roof would have been, flying it up here. So it would have been right about there behind this wood. And then we go down here. If we can see, we got the start of the waterfall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then this would be the triangle part of the courtyard where those structures are, and then boom, there it is. So thinking about it from this straight down, we got that. That's even down in further, like several steps further down, so probably a good 10 feet lower, maybe more, into the ground. So that would line perfectly up with the angle this guy was suggesting. I would say,
Yeah,
it would be just a perfect shot down at the right, just the right angle. If they happen that way, that would be the best explanation. And if it came back from the other spot, it would have been, like you said, at best 10 and 10. You know, so it couldn't have come from the where Robinson was at, which would have been back here, over here on this roof. See right here?
Yeah.
Kind of blocked off in this picture, but yeah. So that's what we got there. And then now this is where it gets interesting, because if what we're about to play right now is true, and it's only a theory at this point, it would explain the second shooter theory, which we just went over, and why we think there was a second shooter. And if that's the case, then this would tie this to CIA and Mossad. And in my opinion, if this is true, it would make a lot more sense and explain the reaction by Kash Patel's FBI, Pam Bondi's botching of the phase one, the other phases of the release of the Epstein files. Like, that was a big blunder, but it would explain a lot in that context when you put this theory into play.
Talked about yet, but it's soon come out that he was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA. I think he's protecting a lot of other people. He's not protecting himself because there's nothing there, but he's protecting a lot of people. Because Trump's now saying it's a hoax, the case is like a hoax or something. I'm like, come on, it's not a hoax. He's been on the plane, many times. Mm-hmm. It's just he was never on the plane with the kids. I've seen the itineraries and I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and a rape occurred. But that can't be said for Clinton, and it can't be said for others. While the Clintons were on the plane, while Bill Clinton was on the plane, there were rapes that occurred.
Overheard at Phoenix Airport on September 8th, 2025, a senior Justice Department investigator who personally worked on the Epstein case tells all. Glenn Prager, who has reviewed Epstein itineraries and has interviewed Epstein's victims, drops a bombshell. He says that the DOJ did not want to go after Epstein because he's a CIA asset, that the evidence from his investigation confirms that Bill Clinton was present for alleged rapes on the Lolita Express, and that President Trump was not present for the rapes that Glenn Prager investigated, but that he is protecting a lot of other people that were.
How about this whole Epstein thing that's like going down?
So I worked on that case. I used to interview all the victims, and then my picture was 20 to 30 victims, in Palm Beach that I was interviewing and dealing with and stuff like that. And then we would go ready to go to trial, and they would flip. Epstein would just pay them off, and they were just like these little kids. They pay off their family. They're all broke kids and poor families, and So you pay him off like anywhere from $150,000 to $500,000. Nothing in that guy's world.
Prager there describes how the victims that he interviewed were paid off by Epstein right before going to trial. Prager has worked as an investigator inside the Department of Justice for over 20 years. According to Prager's LinkedIn About page, it says that during the tenure at DOJ, Prager served as an inspector overseeing sensitive investigations involving major DOJ components, including the FBI, DEA, Bureau of Prisons, U.S. Marshal Service, ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's offices. This seems to corroborate what Prager told us. He was tasked with interviewing Epstein's rape victims and investigating flight logs. On his backpack in the airport, we spotted an embroidered FBI patch, which caught the attention of our citizen journalist.
I'll tell you this, because no, it's not talked about yet, but it'll soon come out that he was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA informant.
He was a CIA.
Although many have suspected it to be the case, this is the first time a Department of Justice official has confirmed that Epstein worked for the CIA and is a foreign asset.
So DOJ was settling a case, and they were just letting him, do house arrest, and they minimized his arrest. Part of that is because all the victims kept on flipping, and they didn't have anyone to go to trial with. More importantly, part is they didn't want to go after him. He's a asset for the United States and Israel for the CIA. I just know that's what he was, and that's why he was protected so long for this. And people turned a blind eye about all this garbage that he was doing in the United States. He had a lot of secrets, more about Israeli stuff than anything else. I mean, he was doing stuff for Israel and the United States. He's working for both.
Glenn Prager, the Department of Justice investigator on the Epstein case, then talks about whether President Trump was involved. Many are trying to tie Trump to Epstein, but what Glenn Prager says is that Trump wasn't present during the inappropriate sexual behavior that he was investigating. But Prager does say that Bill Clinton was, backed up by his experience interviewing the victims and reviewing the Epstein Lolita Express itineraries. Quote, "They killed the Epstein list to protect the Clintons."
But they claim that Trump's involved in the rapes and all that stuff, and he wasn't. I mean, I've seen the agendas, I've seen the itineraries, and I've interviewed all the victims. There's never been an instance where Trump was on a plane with these kids and a rape occurred. But that can't be said for Clinton, and it can't be said for others. I remember that it was being killed because I know Clintons were on there. And
The Clintons were on there.
100%. And while the Clintons were on the plane, while Bill Clinton was on the plane, there were rapes that occurred. And that's what I'm saying. Trump, although as many flights as there were and all that kind of stuff, and on the island and all that stuff, he was never there during a single alleged rape. But Clinton for sure. And that's where the big cover-up was.
The Department of Justice investigator inside the Trump Justice Department says that while Trump may not have been present during the crimes that Prager investigated, it is clear that Trump is, quote, protecting a lot of people.
I don't know what's new that I have never seen that he's so hesitant to now show what's going on and releasing all those files. I think he's protecting a lot of other people. He's not protecting himself because there's nothing there, but he's protecting a lot of people.
The citizen journalist boarded American Airlines Flight 1634 and landed in D.C. Monday at 8 o'clock at night and proceeded to go to dinner with this man, this DOJ investigator, at a restaurant called Blue Duck Tavern. Glenn Prager dislikes the fact Trump said the Epstein scandal is a hoax, but he also says, according to the evidence from his investigation, that Trump is not covering up for himself.
Because Trump's now saying it's a hoax, the case is like a hoax or something. I mean, come on, it's not a hoax. He says a lot of stupid stuff. He's been on the plane, many times. It's just he was never on the plane with the kids. People want to tie it to him and say he's covering up for himself, but he's not.
Now, this is a very good thing for President Trump and seemingly exonerates him from many people who claim that he was doing something inappropriate himself. This dinner went on for an hour and 45 minutes as this Department of Justice investigator revealed things to a stranger that the leadership of the FBI and the Department of Justice has not. Prager revealed more information about Trump's hesitation to be fully transparent with the Epstein case, gave us some details about internal gripes against FBI Director Kash Patel from within the FBI, and he detailed a developing feud between Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi. If you'd like to see more of that conversation in the restaurant, you may subscribe to OMG and find it on our website.
Who is like the one name where you're like, oh my God.
Here he is. Hey there, is this Glenn?
Yes.
You work for the Department of Justice, correct?
No.
You don't work for the Department of Justice. You had a patch on your backpack that said FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, in the airport?
Yeah.
And you talked about how you interviewed the Epstein people, all the Epstein victims. Do you recall that conversation?
I didn't, no. How can I help you?
I wanted to confirm that you, in fact, did work for the department. Hang on with the phone. Let's try calling him again. Glenn?
I'm not talking to you.
Well,
I don't know who you are. I'm not talking to you.
You already did speak to my friend.
Hey, now stop talking. I don't know who you are.
I'm a journalist. I need your help, sir.
I'm not talking to you or any journalist about anything.
Did you interview the Epstein victims?
I can't talk to you.
Sir.
On the heels of releasing this story, I wanted to emphasize just how touching it was for me to see Erica Kirk stand on stage in front of those 74,000 people in a stadium and say that she forgives the assassin who killed her husband, Charlie Kirk. I actually took this photo standing right in front of her when she did that, and I wept. The people standing next to me also wept. In the couple days that followed since that Sunday, it dawned upon me that equally as important as forgiving those who trespass against us is for those of us, the living, to achieve justice and accountability for the bad actors behind the scenes corrupting this country. We must have a Department of Justice that is actually about justice. If we do not have any accountability for bad actors, good people, even God-fearing people, are going to resort not to forgiveness, but vengeance. We cannot allow that to happen. And the only solution is exposure, journalism, sunlight, as the best disinfectant. When the leadership in our government is not forthcoming and transparent about matters they should be, you will see men on the front lines, men on the inside, like this Glenn Prager guy, who are familiar with the files, familiar with Epstein, familiar with who's on the airplanes. Indeed, he's the guy who actually interviewed all the victims in Palm Beach. Well, you'll see people like this be forthcoming and honest when their leadership isn't. I recognized Prager's life is now changed forever. You might be tempted to focus on that and focus on him personally. We have no doubt that no matter how much proof is provided by me, the powers that be will deny, deflect, personalize, and cover all of this up. You may wonder how it is these guys in our government so brazenly open up to total strangers in airports about national security secrets. Please note, this isn't about him or Glenn Prager. It's about opening the floodgates of honesty from other men who are just like Glenn Prager, but who never wanted to be involved. We're just following orders. Prager lived with these secrets, and the horror of what he knows lives on his conscience, the weight on his shoulders. He lives with the guilt for knowing the truth. That is why he was so forthcoming in public in the airport. That is why others with national security secrets will continue to be so forthcoming to our army of citizen exposers. And there are many more out there like Glenn Prager. And now, right now, you who are watching must come forward and tell the truth and be transparent. Be a hero and do the right thing. In the last few weeks, I've reached out to top officials of the Department of Justice repeatedly ahead of these reports. Our attorneys even sent a letter to the FBI Director Kash Patel. There seems to be more of an interest, generally speaking, in covering their ass instead of telling the truth. While we expect that of the previous administrations, we expect better of the Trump administration and those who campaigned on the promise of transparency. Now, I was advised that reaching out far ahead of time would lead to this story being suppressed, something that my team, and I dare say all of the people who actually voted for this administration, can't comprehend. But these reports are going to continue coming out, and they will not be partisan or political. They're going to cut across the political divide. Because this is not a political mission, and I am not a political person. It is my mission to clean up society through transparency, accountability, and the truth. I wrote last week the legacy of Charlie Kirk is to do the right thing for the right reasons. And reflecting on his legacy, I saw a remarkable change within him in the last couple years, but especially the last couple months of observing him from afar and also knowing him personally. I reached out to Charlie to solicit his advice ahead of this story. I was expecting Charlie Kirk to express the same reluctance as the top DOJ officials relayed to me. The same officials that Charlie, no doubt, in some part or in some way, matter, shape, or form, helped to get their jobs in the first place. I told Charlie I was conflicted about what to do. And Charlie Kirk's last words to me were, "James, you should be a journalist first." This kind of journalism is dangerous, legally taxing, and certainly not profitable. If we are to continue to uncover these dark truths, we need your help now. Please donate to our 501c3 nonprofit, Citizen Journalism Foundation, to continue funding these types of investigations. But again, it's called Citizen Journalism Foundation.
So we have that. So here's my take based on all the available evidence. I think, assuming that guy, what that guy, now this is the hypothesis. Is, we don't have any hard evidence to support this yet, but it would make sense if what this person on that we just watched said. But let's hypothetically say it's true. That would mean CIA, Mossad. It would definitely show the complexity of involvement. If it was in fact maybe Mossad or CIA that shot Charlie Kirk from a different angle, from a higher angle, like we just went over. That's a hypothesis, and it would make sense that they would have a patsy and then a couple misdirects, like the first guy that they arrested that was saying, "I shot him, shoot me," that they ended up letting go, who later ended up getting arrested for child porn. So like, if they had to have had 3 or 4 different misdirects set up. I mean, it would make sense, and that would indicate a higher level of operation rather than just a ragtag group, And if it's connected to the Epstein files, that could be, I mean, that would make sense, especially in that context, with the way they reacted and botched the release of that,
Yeah, the Epstein files being, there was this tug of war, this back and forth with the Epstein files, where they said, "Yeah, I've got them sitting on my desk. Yeah, we're going to release them." Then it was like, it turns out there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of things that we don't want anybody to see, and because it's all nasty child porn, and so we're not going to release anything. And that, the reality is, it wouldn't have been such a big deal if it hadn't involved a lot of very powerful people. I mean, if that guy was for real, then that was, powerful people involved in the Lolita Express, where children are flying on these flights, where powerful people are also flying and then reporting that they've been raped. And that's not a small story. That's why everyone is, up in arms about what happened with Epstein. Well, the other thing about Epstein is, there was all this talk about how Epstein had a list and Epstein was keeping track, and Epstein, all of the different ideas were that Epstein was getting dirt on people and then using that for blackmail purposes to manipulate world events. Because if you get blackmail on powerful people by filming them doing things that they ought not, and then you threaten them, that'll get released and you'll be ruined, then you have a card to play to manipulate their behavior, to guarantee their vote on things you want them to vote a certain way.
And it would make sense.
It's like the
in the bigger context of things of how they operate, like the CIA and the Mossad and agencies like that.
yeah,
It would make it's consistent with CIA's previous tactics with what we know of the JFK assassination, what we learned there, and
right,
other things. You know,
right. And the other thing is that I think we have to at least ponder and consider. Um,
yeah,
this is,
definitely.
basically, he said, she said, this is just stuff that I saw following different stories on the internet. But I heard in doing all the research that I did trying to lead up to what's really going on with the Charlie Kirk assassination. I've followed Charlie Kirk for about 3 or 4 years when I just discovered, wow, this guy is really interesting to follow his debates. He makes good arguments and he's got a lot of interesting things to say, and he seems to present himself as a true Christian man, and he certainly stands up for Christian principles along with standing up for the basically what we would call the right wing, and so I was
Well,
interested.
he advocated. Well, let me just. I just want to debunk a few previous conspiracy theories out there about him. There's all these people saying, "Oh, he's racist," but a lot of those clips are completely taken out of context. And when you go back and look at the actual footage, he was very, very welcoming, and even let the people who had questions that opposed him go first before people who agreed with him.
Right.
And so when you go
He
back
would
and actually
let-
look at the footage, you're going to see that he didn't have all that shit's been taken out of context.
Right.
He was
Oh,
speaking on hypotheticals and in certain situations when asked a question in some
and
of
it
those
was a
cases.
debate. He would let them go first, and then he would ask questions to clarify their position, and then he would rebut it, and then he would ask them, do you want to rebut me? I mean, in general, he was always a very fair in following kind of the rules of debate, where each voice gets
Right.
to be heard.
I,
And
I think there's a clip too where he was asked if he was a Christian nationalist, and he said no, he's not a Christian nationalist. So I think that theory is debunked as well.
yeah,
I'm gonna have to locate that clip when I find it. I'll share it on one of our next shows. But that was something I saw a little while back, and I was like, oh wow, see that makes sense because he's being painted as a white nationalist or Christian nationalist. No, that's not the case. A lot of that shit's bullshit.
there's something I want to get
You
to.
have to watch at least some of the full debates to note that or to get that. He wasn't trying to impress his religion on other people. He made it very clear that he made a distinction between theological practice and the fact that we don't live in a theocracy. We live in the constitutional democratic republic. Basically.
Oh, he did, yes, and he said
He made that very clear. And
one of
the whole point of separation of church from state is the state's not supposed to create or hold one religion over any other or persecute people for the practice thereof.
right.
That's the whole point.
That's right.
And so
That is something that
he was
stood
very
up
much in
and
line with that.
said.
So I think there's a misperception that all MAGA or a lot of people in MAGA are Christian nationalists or white nationalists. Right? But no, the white nationalist bullshit, that's fucking alt-right, and that's fucking nothing to do with us. We distance ourselves from that. But some people identify as MAGA in that group. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to deny that, but that's a very small percentage. So, and the same thing with the Christian nationalist movement. That's not everybody that's a Christian that's MAGA is freaking Christian nationalist. Okay, so people need to make that distinction.
The thing that we see in the media is this constant indoctrination. We see constant indoctrination. What I mean by that is there are certain terms that are designed to be incendiary, inflammatory, that are designed to make people have a knee-jerk response. In other words, an instinctive response of, oh, that makes me angry.
Emotion based. It's a manipulation of one's emotions, and they're counting on that.
Right.
You have to be able to step outside your emotions when you're being triggered emotionally by a news broadcast that you're watching. It's worth taking the time to reflect and ask yourself, why does that bother me? What's the source of that emotion? Why do I feel this way? And if you can't trace it, it's a good chance you're being manipulated, especially
Well,
when
it's fairly easy.
you have to look for outside
Right.
sources, but it's hard to realize it when you're not realizing that, when you're thinking that you're right.
There's a
But
long
that's by
tradition.
design. That's by design.
There's a long tradition in our society of condemning Hitler and the Nazis for the horrible things that they did. So that is something that people have kind of a knee-jerk response. If they say that guy's a Nazi, then you go, oh my God, we've got all the, we need to, that, then it's okay to kill that one if he's a Nazi, because that's the most horrible of people. Well, that's something that was constantly been on the news. And I'm talking about the mainstream news media.
Yeah, the mainstream media, they need to tone down their fucking rhetoric because they're the ones that fucking incited this shit using stochastic terrorism. This is
They're
bullshit.
saying fascist, they're saying Nazi.
So I hold them more responsible than Antifa at this point because of their bullshit, because they're fucking complicit in it as well.
It's
CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC.
It's a way of getting people to respond without rational thought by going directly to the limbic system, which is fight, flight, or freeze. In other words, if you feel threatened because I'm using words that are toxic in your mind, and now over time we've built up the ganglia, the neurons in the brain to have a knee-jerk response, an instinctive response that kicks in the limbic system.
Can I give an example from an article I read last night that I was looking into from something somebody else posted on X? I was looking into this article that was talking about basically the school voucher program and how they think some people believe that's a threat to because of the way they're doing it, having the tax dollars follow the student. Actually could take away from the rest of the public that may need those vital resources or funding to at that point. And they were making the argument that it was that there was an agenda for Project 2025, and they tried to tie Trump into it. But the way I noticed the wording was, they said the Trump's Project 2025 and their climate denier agenda, like they use the word climate denier, like as if it's being denied. It's not being denied that there's climate change. That's clear. What's being denied is that what they were claiming they were using that for was not what they were using those funds for when they were rolling with that whole climate grift. That's where I stand on that. To be clear, I do believe there's things we need to be more. But the way that wording has been done and switched, and the way they've switched it, say, oh, the climate change denier. That's an implicit. You're implying that they're using terms that reconfirm your bias, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's these trigger phrases that have been woven into the narrative, and that's exactly what they are: is trigger phrases. They're meant to trigger an automatic programmed response so that you won't think. When you hear these terms, they don't want you to think about, well, okay, hang on, let me just think through this rationally and decide whether or not this is true. What they want is, oh, that bastard, oh, how horrible. And that's exactly what they've programmed people to do. And so people have these programmed responses that come up. I mean, I saw a TikTok video, some girl talking about how she's known this guy for years and she knew he was a conservative. And then one day he said something.
We need to find it and bring it up because that's a good one. It's a good example.
And she suddenly hated him. And what that is you associate the person that you want to character assassinate with something that is already hated, and then you can get people to hate them. And that's what we see with the whole people. You mention the name of Trump and they go crazy on you. I mean, the MAGA hats getting ripped off of heads, the MAGA signs getting ripped out of yards. These things, it's people that don't have a rational thought process that says, there are these intelligent reasons that I've evaluated and I've studied and I've looked at the gradations of reason and I've analyzed things. Yeah, this is the one.
Yes, this is the one. This is a perfect example, folks, of what we're talking about. And she doesn't know why. She doesn't know why she suddenly hates this person. But this is a perfect example of what happens when you do that. When you radicalize and use rhetoric like that in the mainstream media, and you get people to believe that you demonize the other side. That's what we have to be careful and wary of. That's why we need to talk to each other, need to have open discussion and dialogue and debate. That's exactly what Charlie Kirk advocated for. He advocated for doing just that, because if we don't talk to each other, as he said, that's when we risk civil war.
Found out today that somebody that I work with is a conservative, and he's somebody who's really intelligent, and he's somebody who works in climate tech as a super smart guy, somebody I would never have thought was conservative, and apparently he is. And it's surprising and it's disgusting, but what's most surprising to me is the level of sudden hatred that I have for him. Sudden hatred for this man who I used to respect suddenly just went boop, and I hate him now.
So that's very concerning, and that's indicative of brainwashing. I'm just going to say it.
It's like I say, you install the triggers, and then all it takes is, oh yeah, I kind of lean conservative, and now it's not just that this person, yesterday, 5 minutes ago, you basically respected them and thought highly of them. Very intelligent person, always respectful, always kind. And now you hate them? Well, that's something triggered that was set up to trigger. It didn't just happen out of the blue. This person has been indoctrinated in a way that they didn't process everything that was coming in a rational, thoughtful way, because it's designed that way. It's, everyone has heard of subliminal programming. Well, there's also the liminal programming where it's right in front of your face, but you hear it over and over and over. As a matter of fact, one of Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, said, if you tell a lie, tell it loud and often, make it a big lie, and tell it loud enough and often enough, and people will believe it. And that is the playbook that is being pursued on all the major media outlets and in the internet that are the programmed internet. People are being indoctrinated with these big lies. And now let's bring it back down to where we started here, because I have heard that Charlie Kirk told some of his close friends that he was very concerned about Israel because, and his close friends seemed to suggest that he had softened on his stance with Israel. He was backed by Israel to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars in developing his organization. And he apparently, as I understand it, he had a meeting with Netanyahu, and I haven't verified any of this. This is rumor, but I heard that he had a meeting with Netanyahu and that Netanyahu offered him something like $150 million to.
No, it's 250 from what I heard.
How much?
I think it was 250 from what I heard.
$250 million to revitalize or to strengthen his organization. And he turned it down because he knew that money coming from Israel came with strings attached, which is, don't go against Israel. Don't say anything against Israel. And he was beginning to look at what's going on in Gaza and feel some conscience about not speaking up in the way that any Christian person would when you see what is clearly a genocide going on. Mm-hmm. You can't just look the other way and pretend that's not happening. And interestingly, Israel has used anti-Semitism, the specter of anti-Semitism, to shield them from every mention of anything that goes against Israel. And they sort of get away with murder over and over and over. I mean,
that's a fair point.
That's a fair Israelis point. Celebrating outside the van across from 9/11 when the building come down.
Well, that's part of the lingo though, like that you hear, like Nazi, fascist, authoritarian, anti-Semitic, and it's all just labels, and it's just weaponized to label anybody that you disagree with as the enemy, and it's meant to dehumanize, and that's how we got here, folks. So somebody, now whether or not that it turned out that it was Tyler Robinson or was it actually in fact a second shooter, which I don't know. I think there's a good possibility it could be a second shooter based on the whole Epstein connection, and then what we know about the 250 from Netanyahu that Charlie turned down, at least from what we speculate there. It would make sense, and it would also explain a lot of the behavior of some of the DOJ officials, like Bongino, Cash Patel early on when it came to the Epstein stuff, Pam Bondi's botching of it.
Are terrified of
It would
that.
explain the behavior
It's
in
real.
that regard because they probably got in there and thought they were going to release it all and realized that Mossad was in and CIA were involved, and it's like, oh shit, we're going to be dead if we don't handle this a certain way.
Right, right. I mean, we may be painting a target on our own backs here, and that's.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the Mossad is just as good as our fucking CIA. I mean, or better. In fact, they're actually probably got a better track record on their corporate operations. They're probably the best in the world, along with some of the best of the CIA. But they're
Kirk
far
said,
better than the CIA.
Talking security, the Israelis are it.
That's what he was talking about.
And, I guess if they're on your side, that's a good thing. And if they're not on your side, maybe that's a really, 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 really bad thing.
That's true. That's true. No, and we definitely need to take that into consideration. Let's get into our next story. We're going to be talking about the indictment of James Comey. We're going to be going over some statements by the DOJ and some of the indictments. And then what we'll also do is we're going to also get into the story about the 275 FBI plainclothes agents in the crowd and on January 6th that just dropped as well.
FBI agents in the crowd in January 6th. Oh, that's got to be a lot of bunk. What are you talking about?
274.
See, I knew it. It's 274. Get your facts straight, buddy.
Here we go. All right, so this is hold on, let me get to the statement. Oh, I have it over here. Hold on, I got to bring it up. 1 second here. Oh, no, we just have this. Okay, never mind. We have the indictment. So I'm going to go ahead and let you read this, Robin.
All right, move that gray thing out of my way. And
yeah. Let me, I have to hide my toolbar. Hold on. I'm doing it right now. All right, better?
Yeah, there's still a gray line right in the middle. There we go. All right. In the United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia, Alexandria Division, September 25th, 2025, filed in open court. Criminal number 1:25-CR-272. United States of America versus James B. Comey Jr., defendant. Count 1, false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Count 2, obstruction of a congressional proceeding, 18 U.S.C. 1505. Indictment. Count 1. False statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. On or about September 30, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, the defendant, James B. Comey Jr., did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, you're going to have to scroll it for me, and fraudulent statement in a matter within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States by falsely stating to a U.S. Senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he, James B. Comey Jr., had not, quote, authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports, end quote, regarding an FBI investigation concerning person 1. That statement was false because, as James B. Comey Jr. then and there knew, he in fact had authorized person 3 to serve as an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person 1. 3, all in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Case 125, document 1, filed 925. Okay. Count 2. Obstruction of a congressional proceeding, 18 U.S.C. 1505. 4, on or about September 30th, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, the defendant James B. Comey Jr. did corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which an investigation was being had before the Senate Judiciary Committee by making false and misleading statements before that committee, all in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1505. A true bill pursuant to the E-Government Act. The original of this page has been filed under seal in the clerk's office by Scribble Lindsay Halligan, United States Attorney, and the foreperson is redacted.
All right, so I want to press something out. Why is it not letting me go? Oh, there we go. So that was this document. It says uploaded September 26, 2025 at 2:06 p.m. Okay, so that was the first filing. This next one is the second document. This is uploaded September 25th, 2025, 8:35 p.m. So this document and this document respectively. So I'm gonna have you go ahead and read this. This has got a few more indictments in it, and there's a couple typos in it, but I don't know how relevant that is as far as the
Okay.
legitimacy of the actual indictment, but we'll see. But we're just gonna go over it, and then we're gonna go into the FBI story right here, the bombshell. All right, go ahead.
All right. Report of a grand jury's failure to concur in an indictment. United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia filed in open court September 25th, 2025. Clerk U.S. District Court, Alexandria, Virginia. United States of America v. James B. Comey, Jr., defendant. Report of a grand jury's failure to concur in an indictment. As the foreperson of the grand jury of this court at a session held at Alexandria, Virginia on September 25th, 2025, I report that 12 or more grand jurors did not concur in finding an indictment in, looks like it says count 1 or count 2 only.
Yeah, it says count. I think it says count 1 only, and
Yeah.
that's looks like it's a handwritten in there with pen, which normally is not really. They're not really supposed to do that. It does happen. I've seen it happen in court filings, and then pass it. It's still consider it valid. I don't know why they do that. Why would do that? But I've seen it before happen, so it's not that uncommon. I have seen it in some of these other cases.
Apparently, this foreperson felt that it was very important that they did not concur in finding an indictment in this count of this case. And so apparently there were other counts in the case that probably they did find an indictment. So let us continue. I report that 12 more grand jurors did not concur in finding an indictment in count 1 only in this case under Federal R Criminal P 6C. This record is being filed with the court clerk and will not be made public unless the court orders otherwise. Date September 25th, 2025. Pursuant to the E-Government Act, the original of this page has been filed under seal in the clerk's office, and of course it's redacted foreperson. Filed in open court September 25th in United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia, Alexandria Division, U.S. v. James Comey. Criminal number 1-1:25 CR 272. Count 1, false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Count 2, false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Count 3, obstruction of a congressional proceeding, 18 U.S.C. 1505. Indictment, count 1. False statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. On or about September 30th, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, the defendant, James B. Comey Jr., did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement in a matter within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States by falsely stating to a U.S. Senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he, James B. Comey Jr., did not remember, quote, being taught, end quote, of person one's, quote, approval of a plan concerning, end quote, person two, and the 2016 U.S. presidential election. That statement and representation was false because, as James B. Comey Jr. then and there knew, he had, in fact, been provided information regarding person one's approval of a plan concerning person two and the 2016 U.S. presidential election, all in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Count 2, false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the United States government, 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. 4, on or about September 30th, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, the defendant, James B. Comey Jr., did willfully and knowingly make a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement in a matter within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States by falsely stating to a U.S. Senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he, James B. Comey Jr., had not, quote, authorized something else at the FBI authorize someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports, end quote, regarding an FBI investigation concerning person one. That statement was false because, as James B. Comey Jr. then and there knew, he in fact had authorized person three to serve as an anonymous source in news reports regarding an FBI investigation concerning person one. 6, all in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001A2. Count 2, obstruction of a congressional proceeding.
I should specify. I think that was a typo, but I think that was meant to be count 3.
1505. 4. On or about September 30th, 2020, in the Eastern District of Virginia, the defendant James B. Comey Jr. did corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which an investigation was being had before the Senate Judiciary Committee by making false and misleading statements before that committee, all in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1505. A true bill pursuant to the E-Government Act. The original page has been filed on the seal in the clerk's office. Lindsay Halligan, United States Attorney.
Okay, so that dropped. Yeah, that was day before yesterday, the day that Comey got indicted, and then that night, this article dropped. And so we're going to go into this and have the computer read this one for us.
Yeah, Bombshell. 274 agents sent to Capitol Hill.
Let me just get down here and select the rest of this so that the screen reader can do its job. Here we go.
FBI secretly deployed more than 250 plainclothes agents to the U.S. Capitol during the January 6, 2021 riot. An operation so disorganized it unleashed searing frustrations among many of the FBI's rank and file that the Bureau had lost its core competencies to wokeness and allowed its employees to become pawns in a political war, according to an after-action report kept from the public for more than 4 years. Scores of FBI agents and personnel, many from the Bureau's premier Washington field office, WFO, sent anonymous complaints to the after-action team detailing how agents were sent into an unsafe scenario without proper safety equipment or the ability to identify themselves readily as armed officers to other police agencies, the report obtained by Just the News shows. The most persistent complaint was that the Bureau during the James Comey and Chris Wray era had become infected with political biases and liberal ideology that treated the protesters from the summer 2020 Black Lives Matter riots far differently than those arrested in the aftermath of the January 6 episode. The FBI should make clear to its personnel and the public that, despite its obvious political bias, it ultimately still takes its mission and priorities seriously, one employee wrote in a stinging review. It should equally and aggressively investigate criminal activity regardless of the offender's perceived race, political affiliations, or motivations, and it should equally and aggressively protect all Americans regardless of perceived race, political affiliations, or motivations. That agent urged FBI leaders to identify viable exit options for FBI personnel who no longer feel it is legally or morally acceptable to support a federal law enforcement and intelligence agency motivated by political bias. One agent suggested the problem extended beyond the Bureau to D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, indicating a more widespread problem with political bias. Currently, the U.S. Attorney's Office is dictating what it is that gets investigated. This is a dangerous precedent because we can barely get them to prosecute investigations that clearly meet thresholds needed for federal prosecutions, the agent wrote. However, their willingness to conduct a search warrant on someone's life for a misdemeanor seems ridiculous. It is unreasonable for the FBI to conduct investigations involving misdemeanor violations at a federal level. It is not our role. Many of the agents' feedback focused on the Washington field office and its culture. WFO is a hopelessly broken office that's more concerned about wearing masks and recruiting preferred racial, sexual groups than catching actual bad guys, one worker wrote. Added another. I wish you all would pay more attention to our safety than what type of masks we wear. If you are going to deploy us to a riot situation, then give us the proper damn safety equipment, helmet, face shield, protective clothing, and training. The after-action responses, 50 pages in all, were located by current FBI Director Kash Patel's team and recently turned over to the House Judiciary Committee and its special subcommittee investigating security failures and weaponization of law enforcement during the January 6 riot. 274 undercover agents embedded in riot, with no safety plans. The document has proven a bombshell to lawmakers, revealing for the first time that the FBI had a total of 274 agents deployed to the Capitol in plainclothes and with guns after the violence started, but with no clear safety gear of way to be recognized by other law enforcement agencies working in the chaos of the riot. You can read the after-action report below. File FBI HJC 119J6I G001-0050.pdf. Ray, Patel's predecessor, steadfastly refused to tell Congress how many, if any, agents went to the Capitol that day. And a prior DOJ Inspector General report did not divulge the number, referring only to a SWAT team the Bureau sent into the Capitol and having more than 24 informants in the crowd. The existence of mass FBI agents at the Capitol on January 6 could also be a problem in many of the cases that were subsequently brought in court. If agents were witnesses at the Capitol and did not disclose it in the subsequent affidavits during prosecutions, it could create grounds for defendants to appeal. The document also reveals for the first time that there were widespread concerns for years inside the Bureau, sentiments that boiled over after the FBI began sending SWAT teams to arrest January 6 participants on misdemeanor charges, that the FBI had become biased in favor of liberals and against conservatives. Despite the pre-existing report, Ray rejected that notion in testimony before Congress. The idea that I'm biased against conservatives seems somewhat insane to me, given my own personal background, Ray told Congress in 2023. I have found almost invariably, the people screaming the loudest about the politicization of the FBI are themselves the most political, and more often than not, making claims of politicization to advance their own views or goals, and they often don't know the facts or are choosing to ignore them. Ray added in an episode of the podcast, FBI Retired Case File Review, that aired the same year. Agent. Our response to the Capitol riot reeks of political bias. But frontline agents repeatedly raised issues of liberal bias and wokeness in their after-action assessments. The words, politics, or bias, were mentioned more than a dozen times in responses, and similar sentiments scores of times in the 50 pages. Our response to the Capitol riot reeks of political bias, one wrote. Another added, I wonder if our biases affected our preparedness. A third suggested the agents and analysts had become engrossed in the main business of Washington, politics, rather than crime fighting, and blamed the Bureau's leadership for the slide. We have been used as pawns in a political war, and FBI leadership fell into the trap and has allowed it to happen, that employee wrote. We are supposed to call balls and strikes, regardless of political pressure. Now we can't even be trusted to be on the field, another agent commented. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan vowed through a spokesman to get to the bottom of the still untold secrets of January 6 alongside of the January 6 Subcommittee Chairman Barry Loudermilk. Due to our oversight, Chairman Loudermilk's leadership and Director Patel's leadership, we continue to discover what exactly happened on January 6, Jordan's spokesman Russell Dye told Just the News. During the more than 2 years I have been investigating the events of January 6, I have seen evidence that suggests potential political bias within agencies that may have influenced their actions before, during, and after the events of January 6. But this report is more damning than anyone could have imagined and opens up even more questions, Loudermilk told Just the News. Why is Congress just finding out there were significantly more FBI assets at the Capitol than previously identified? Were the courts that heard cases regarding January 6 made aware these agents were at the Capitol? Were any of the agents tasked to investigate individuals at the Capitol? Were they ever called to testify during the prosecutions of J6 defendants? Did any of the former FBI leaders testify about the additional personnel at the Capitol? These are just a few of the questions my committee will be asking, said the chairman. The report solves one of the January 6 mysteries. How did the FBI respond when violence began breaking out at the Capitol? Ray previously refused to divulge to Congress how many agents or informants were present during the incident. The initial response of having us again respond to a riot by standing the line did not seem appropriate because we do not have the gear, equipment, or training for riot control, one agent said. As in June, agents were again deployed onto the streets, specifically around the Capitol, and simply told to stand behind MPD. No other direction. When asked specifically what they were supposed to do or who to check in with, they were told simply that management said to go there and there was no answer, another said. FBI agents do not have training for, nor equipment for, riot control. Agents complained of politically motivated, double standard. The report also revealed agents strongly disagreed with how they were deployed and how cases were pursued after that day, seeing a double standard. The actions on January 6, 2021 were absolutely despicable and unacceptable in a civilized society. What is even more unacceptable was the hypocrisy displayed by the FBI and its leadership in their attempt to go after those involved in the Capitol riots, while we as agents watched cities burn across America during the summer of 2020, one agent said. The conspiracy to commit crimes at the Capitol on January 6 were also committed by bad actors during the summer riots of 2020 leading up to the election on November 3, 2020. Agents stood by on the ground in Washington, D.C. and observed stores being looted, burned, and ripped of anything of value, the agent wrote. Even worse, officers were assaulted in the streets in broad daylight with cameras rolling, and yet our response then was nothing like the Capitol riots' response on and after January 6, 2021. I do not recall a single instance where the FBI, specifically FBI WFO, made any attempt to put the resources behind the summer riots of 2020, as they did during the Capitol riots, the agent explained. The scathing comments from Washington field office agents assessing their own bureau's work that day were not included in an Office of Inspector General report reviewing the FBI's performance in the lead up to and during the January 6 electoral certification. That report only confirmed that there were several hundred agents deployed, but provided no further detail about the challenges they faced or their complaints.
Okay. Sorry, folks. I'm eating some chips right now, so don't mind me.
That's a real bombshell. I mean, people have talked about January 6th a lot.
Here's one of the quotes from that article, real quick, because I want to go over these real quick. I just wanted to get these out the way, and then we'll talk about it, just so people will recognize it.
These are comments from the field agents that were deployed by the Washington field office.
Yeah, this is the after-action report we're looking at right here, folks. What is even more unacceptable was the hypocrisy displayed by the FBI and its leadership in their attempt to go after those involved in Capitol riots, while we as agents watched cities burn across America during the summer of 2020. We just heard that one a minute ago from the article. We were once an apolitical organization, but I no longer see us as such. Looking from the ground up, we have been used as pawns in a political war, and FBI leadership. Oh yeah, no, I know it's there. Sorry, let me remove it. My bad. Sorry, folks. I hate Zoom. You need to update your software because you didn't used to have this issue with the share bar showing up on the live or the other person's screen. So you guys got to fix that because it didn't used to do that before, and it's a big pain in the ass. Let's continue. We were once an apolitical. Oh yeah, I already read this one. So okay. No, I haven't read this one. Oh no, I did. Well, I'll just read it again. Screw it. Sorry. We were once an apolitical organization, but I no longer see us as such looking from the ground up. We have been used as pawns in a political war, and FBI leadership fell into the trap and allowed it to happen. We are supposed to call balls and strikes, regardless of political pressure. Now we can't even be trusted to be on the field. And then we got this one. And in June, the agents were again deployed onto the streets, specifically around the Capitol, and simply told to stand behind MPD. No other direction. When asked specifically what they were supposed to do or who to check in with, they were told simply that management should go there, and there was no answer. FBI agents do not have training for nor equipment for riot control. MPD looks at the agents as a liability, standing behind them with no equipment and no comms. At one point, MPD told them to put their gas masks on, which of course they did not have. Management cannot keep sending agents into harm's way simply as a show of force. The initial response of having us again respond to a riot by standing the line did not seem appropriate because we do not have the gear, equipment, or training for riot control. My first concern involves officer safety. We are lacking in training and equipment to fulfill a crowd control mission, placing rank and file agents in a situation that is unsafe for us, unsafe for our law enforcement partners, and unsafe for the people with whom we interact. Okay, and I think that's the last.
So they sent these guys out. They said, go stand there and do nothing, say nothing, but you don't get equipment, you don't get anything. You're just there. And what is this? A show of force? Okay. And yet the agents refer to the Antifa riots or the riots earlier in the year when people were burning cities, burning cars, destroying buildings, looting, and they say we just stood there and watched. And there weren't arrests from all of those.
Correct. That's now I'm gonna comment on that. For people that are like freaking out about Trump sending in federal troops to the to Portland, Oregon area, keep in mind that that was a big part of all the activity during 2020 that was allowed to happen. Okay. Trump declared Antifa a terrorist organization. Once he's done that on the executive order, once that's in play, they are considered a terrorist organization. And you can't tell me there's not pamphlets and booklets because I found them all over the internet. Okay. On these tactics by Antifa. This is a real organization. This is actually a very well documented organization. It's been around at least since the Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street. This was a big problem for a lot of Anons that were in the Occupy Wall Street protest back in the day. I was not there during that time per se, but this is relevant to where we're at right now in our society. They were also known as the Black Bloc. A lot of Anons ran into that problem and they were looting stores and trying to destroy shit. And Anons were like, no, don't do that. That's not what we're about. And that's a big distinction there. And yet back in my day, when I got caught for my case, because I was anonymous, they came after us because they considered us cyber terrorists. We were decentralized as an organization. There was no official membership, but we were definitely a loose-knit organization, anonymous. That was what that was founded on, and there's more context to that, and and that ties into Mr. Robot and all that shit. But I'll get into that another time. That story is not for today, but soon. Now that being said, there's context there that we know this happens. Now but that's the difference. Antifa is an actual freaking thing, and it's not hard to spot when you go and look at all the footage from the summer 2020 riots and all that shit. It's all there. So the idea that Trump's going into no, they've been declared a terrorist organization. Legally, you can go in there as if in that aspect to protect federal agencies like ICE facilities. That's what they're being sent in there to protect against rioters that are trying to destroy shit and harm agents, especially after the Dallas, Texas ICE shooting facility that happened the other day. So he's well within his rights to do that. Now he's not going out there freaking rounding up people. No, they're not freaking going in to take over and shoot civilians. None of that shit's going on. Okay. So stop that. But they will spray pepper balls and all that shit if there's rioters that are causing mayhem and trying to harm agents. That's just the way it works. But that does not mean it's fascism. It's not the same thing as freaking the Gestapo. So let's not make the comparison because it devalues and cheapens those who actually went through the actual Holocaust, folks. So let's keep that in mind and be respectful as well from that point. But that's where it's at. Comments?
Yeah, the reality is that we've had a government that was sponsoring terrorism, and I also saw an interesting post today about sleeper cells of terrorist organizations that are in the United States, 1,000 sleeper cells that are in the United States now. And of course, this was all allowed to happen and basically encouraged for whatever reason by the prior administration. They encouraged other governments to think of us as open borders, send them all. And so these other governments sent in all the criminals and all, because it was a way that they could clean up their own society. Just send them all to America. They're taking all comers. Let's send them out. So there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Something like 8 million people flooded in the United States. And And
And some of
among
them,
those,
and not just from Mexico or but other parts of the world too, from China, from the Middle East. I mean, hell, there was a video of one terrorist that was a known terrorist from on a terrorist organization that was spotted, and they, during this time, and I remember it was a big video, and he was bragging about it, and he was just let in and he disappeared. So we know that this is, we have MS-13 gang members, Trinidad. This is a real thing, but
Nicaragua is
protesting and attacking ICE facility because they're being told that ICE is kidnapping people off the street, which is a totally bullshit narrative, by the way, as far as I've been able to tell. It's ridiculous, and it's causing harm to agents that are actually trying to do their job. You guys never provided or protested when Obama or or Biden were doing the same thing. Mostly Obama, but I mean, come on. Those cages that everybody complains about Trump making in his first term, he didn't make those. Obama did. And that little AOC, that photo op that AOC did where she's standing in front of the fence. Well, the actual other side of that fence wasn't anything. She wasn't looking at those fences. That was photo op. But it was poorly acted, but it was a photo op. But that was a narrative that they tried to push. The media included. So it's like we can't even trust our mainstream media anymore to the extent that the fact that they were still trying to spin the narrative and not take accountability for the fact that they were partially complicit in inciting the stoke terrorism with what happened with Charlie Kirk, and they were not trying to take accountability for it, just tells you that they're guilty of sin.
Yeah, they're guilty as
no pun intended.
And of course they are,
But
because
you don't do that unless you have a lot to lose, and they're all in. They can't do anything but double and triple and quadruple down.
And you want to know why? You want to understand that better? Follow the money. You follow the money, and you find that the major news media is all funded by huge drug companies, by
you have your COVID cover up as well.
By
by Pfizer.
And that the big money that's flowing into the news organizations is coming through the drug organizations. They have an agenda, and they're working towards that agenda by sabotaging the American way of life and essentially trying to bring America down. And it's not, and people need to understand, there are those in positions of power, and I'm not talking about American government. I'm talking about positions of real power that are they don't have allegiance to a country. They are multinational.
They're globalists.
They're globalist, multinational capitalists that are attempting to take control of all of the resources of the planet, and that also means all of the people of the planet.
Yes.
They want to use us as resources for their own purposes, and toward that end, they manipulate the minds of people to separate us from each other, to create divisions in the populace, so that we no longer join together to battle the real enemy, which is the globalists that are attempting to override the United States is a big threat to them. We stand.
I'm going to get into this Google admits censorship real quick, because you're right there on a good point, but I want to segue right into this.
Google admits censorship under Biden, promises to end bans of YouTube accounts of thousands of Americans censored for political speech. September 25th, 2025, press release. Washington, D.C. Today, thanks to the oversight of Chairman Jim Jordan, R. Ohio, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations on topics such as COVID-19 and elections an opportunity to return to the platform. Google also admitted the following to the House Judiciary Committee. The Biden administration pressured Google to censor Americans and remove content that did not violate YouTube's policies. 2, the Biden administration's censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. 3, public debate should never come at the expense of must be on authorities. 4, the company will never use third-party, quote, fact checkers. 5, Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech, including the removal of lawful content. These major admissions come after Chairman Jordan's subpoena to Google and a years-long investigation into the company.
Read the full letter from Google here, and we're going to go into that right now. Let me just make it bigger so you can see it better. Brother. Very cool.
King and Spalding LLP, 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., 2006, 4707. Telephone number 202-737-0500. Fax 202-626-3737. www.kslaw.com. September 23rd, 2025, by electronic mail. The Honorable Tim Jordan, Chairman, Committee on the Judiciary, United States of House of Representatives, 2056 Rayburn House Office Building, Washington, D.C., 20515. Dear Chairman Jordan, this statement of facts is submitted on behalf of our client, Alphabet Inc., and its subsidiary, YouTube, collectively Alphabet or the company, in response to subpoenas issued by the House Committee on the Judiciary. Excuse me, the committee on February 15th, 2023 and March 6th, 2025. Of course, Alphabet is the name that Google adopted when they went through a certain transformation.
Yes, correct.
Throughout the committee's investigations, Alphabet provided responsive information to the committee to fulfill its oversight responsibilities, producing internal records and providing extensive testimony, including more than 40 sets of responsive documents and the voluntary participation of 20 executives in transcribed interviews. Alphabet is a collection of businesses, the largest of which is Google. Alphabet's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Alphabet is committed to building helpful products for everyone, and the company aspires to give all users the tools they need to increase their knowledge. The company is committed to doing its part to continue to keep the digital ecosystem safe, reliable, and open to free expression. Alphabet designs its products to work for everyone. Bias towards a particular viewpoint is not in line with the company's values or the company's business interests. Boy, how things have changed. That's a little commentary, folks. Alphabet's business model depends on being Alphabet's business model depends on being a useful source of information for everyone and a home for users of all backgrounds. As a result, Alphabet has a natural long-term business incentive to apply and develop its policies consistently, impartially, and independently. The committee and its investigation. The Honorable Jim Jordan, September 23rd, 2025. The committee and its investigation. The company appreciates the accountability from the House Judiciary Committee, led by Chairman Jim Jordan, and its critical role in advancing the core American value of freedom of expression. The company has a commitment to freedom of expression. This commitment is unwavering and will not bend to political pressure. This is a little hard for me to read, considering that we did a story about, 6 months ago on how Google was censoring free speech.
Oh, no, I know. We covered this a while ago, trying to point this out, and it wasn't until now Google's actually had to have admitted it, but
Right.
we did cover this,
Yes,
and
we
actually,
covered it.
we definitely covered this.
Did a report on this, you and I.
Yep, I remember.
5, the company has a commitment to freedom of expression. This commitment
They're
is
just trying to cozy up to the House Oversight Committee because of the way they're wording this. They're trying to tee it off real just nice for them, so they don't get any backlash from them, any more backlash.
Right.
But they need to do more than they've already done. They need to put people in jail that actually did censor people that were involved in that. So you're gonna have to do better, Google.
Yeah, they're definitely puckering up pretty hard here. And will not bend. The company has a commitment to freedom of expression. This commitment is unwavering and will not bend to political pressure. Transparency regarding government interactions with private platforms is essential for fostering public trust and upholding principles of free expression. The committee's investigation brought to light new information that enhanced public understanding in this respect.
They're totally stuck up to the House Oversight Committee.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Biden administration and Alphabet. 7, the COVID-19 pandemic.
In big trouble.
Oh boy, yeah. 7, the COVID-19 pandemic was an unprecedented time in which online platforms had to reach decisions about how best to balance freedom of expression with responsibility, including responsibility with respect to the moderation of user-generated content that could result in real-world harm. 8, senior Biden administration officials, including White House officials, conducted repeated and sustained outreach to Alphabet and pressed the company regarding certain user-generated content related to the COVID-19 pandemic that did not violate its policies. While the company continued to develop and enforce its policies independently, Biden administration officials continued to press the company to remove non-violative user-generated content. Yes. They did. I can attest to that.
Tonight.
As online platforms, including Alphabet, grappled with these decisions, the administration's officials, including President Biden, created a political atmosphere that sought to influence the actions of platforms based on their concerns regarding misinformation. 10. It is unacceptable and wrong when any government, including the Biden administration, attempts to dictate how the company moderates content, and the company has consistently fought against those efforts on First Amendment grounds. Okay, I'll take you at your word. Sure you have. YouTube. 11. YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice and show them the world. Every day, YouTube builds and improves tools and systems that empower creators, viewers, and businesses to find and share information. Over 2 billion logged-in users worldwide visit each month, and over 500 hours of content are uploaded every minute by an extraordinarily diverse community of creators who span over 100 countries and 80 languages. On a daily basis, users watch over 1 billion hours of video on YouTube. 12. There is a wider variety of views on the YouTube platform than on any other information source in history. YouTube will strive to foster self-expression on an array of topics as diverse as its user base, to nurture a thriving creative and informational ecosystem, and to be an engine of economic opportunity. 13. YouTube creates new economic opportunities for artists, creators, podcasters, journalists, and small businesses to share their creativity and products in the United States and across the globe. 14. YouTube's creative ecosystem supported more than 490,000 full-time American jobs and contributed $55 billion to the U.S. economy in 2024, according to research from Oxford Economics. YouTube's content moderation approach and commitment to free expression. 15. YouTube takes seriously the importance of protecting free expression and access to a range of viewpoints. 16. YouTube's community guidelines and terms of service apply equally to all users, from private citizens to the most visible public figures,
During COVID,
and to all types of content, regardless of the viewpoints expressed. Oh, how the worm has turned.
I know, isn't it great? Finally, we got hard proof that that we were right. Even though, I mean, we got screenshots and all that shit from back then, but I mean, we were ridiculed and shit a lot by a lot of establishment during that time because of who was on opposite and what they did and how they silenced us about the COVID issue and anybody that was against it. Like they literally, yeah. So then this is a real thing, and it wasn't not just we're hot, all this Jimmy Kimmel bullshit that everybody's bitching about now, which is an FCC issue, really, not even a freaking Donald Trump issue, but they're trying to make it like that. They did far worse under the Biden administration with this COVID bullshit because the FBI and other agencies directly called up Facebook, Meta, Alphabet, and pressured them to censor. That's direct government to private sector government censorship.
Yeah.
That is more fascist than I can imagine. And then the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the rhetoric that encouraged or incited that potentially. I mean, the media calling us all fascists and Nazis for the last 10 fucking years. You think that didn't have a fucking role? You bet your ass it did.
Whether that had a role in the assassination of Charlie Kirk is something that is a question that will have to remain unanswered.
It did have a role in the shooting at the house facility.
If you'll let me say, what it did have a role in was the vast numbers of people that actually celebrated the murder on live television of someone that they did not agree.
That's very true. Yep.
I'll continue with YouTube's content moderation approach.
When I changed it there, I was really pissed because they tried to I wanted to give some context from my own experience and shit, and I want people to understand that this did in fact happen, and this is the Alphabet's own lawyer's letter admitting it to the House Judiciary Committee. Yeah, so we're denying this, people. You can't use this as a freaking tactic anymore or conversation point, nor can you use the January 6th talking point, because that doesn't hold up anymore either. So time to check yourself and do some reflection. All of us, really.
Right. Well, our whole society has been deceived. You and I were calling it out, many, many months ago. We called up Google and said, these people are lying. These people are arranging for you to get the truth that they want you to have. And they're working with government
And
agencies.
that's right. We're getting with calling the shit out. They should stop calling us conspiracy theorists and just start calling us spoiler alert specialists.
Yeah. Truth tellers wouldn't be bad.
Go ahead.
When you say conspiracy theorist, oh yes, that the new
spoiler alert
word for
specialist?
that is truth tellers. All right,
There
let's
you go.
YouTube's content moderation approach and commitment to free expression. This is just
I know, it's
so
so
ironic.
sad.
It's hard for me to even read. 15. YouTube takes seriously the importance of protecting free expression and access to a range of viewpoints. 16. YouTube's community guidelines and terms of service apply equally to all users, from private citizens to the most visible public figures, and to all types of content, regardless of the viewpoints expressed. 17. The company has transparently evolved its policy framework related to COVID-19 to ensure space for further debate and discussion on the platform. YouTube never had community guidelines prohibiting discussion of the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, sorry, did you have a comment there?
No, I was saying about time, because
Yeah.
they sure as hell weren't doing that when Biden was in office.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. The pressure was unrelenting and fierce from YouTube and all Facebook and Twitter, everybody, and all the news. And
We got 2 more pages to go. I just wanted to say that. I didn't want to get off too far on a tangent, but you're right. But let's get through the rest of this document first.
Okay, 17. The company has transparently evolved its policy framework related to COVID-19 to ensure space for further debate and discussion on the platform. YouTube never had community guidelines prohibiting discussion of the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. B, as publicly announced in 2023, YouTube ended several COVID-19 content policies. C, as of December 2024, YouTube retired the remaining standalone COVID-19 policies and allowed discussion of various treatments for COVID-19. 18. On key issues of medical content, YouTube policies continue to evolve in line with a dynamic environment. Health authorities have changed their guidance over time, and Alphabet's policies have evolved as well.
You mean administrations have changed hand and now the bad guys are out? Of course they have.
YouTube's current approach allows a wide range of content regarding COVID-19 and elections, while the reliance on health authorities in the context was well-intentioned. The company recognizes it should never come at the expense of public debate on these important issues.
Thank you.
Fucking A right, excuse me. 19. YouTube continues to enable diversity of perspectives and believes creators should be able to openly debate political ideas on the platform. In June 2023, YouTube sunsetted a policy to allow for discussion of possible widespread fraud, errors, or glitches occurring in the 2020 and other past U.S. presidential elections. 20. No matter the political atmosphere, YouTube will continue to enable free expression on its platform, particularly as it relates to issues subject to political debate. Political debate and discussion are in the public's interest, which is why YouTube expanded its approach to educational, documentary, scientific, and artistic content on the platform. 21. In contrast to other large platforms, YouTube has not operated a fact-checking program that identifies and compensates fact-checking partners to produce content to support moderation. YouTube has not and will not empower fact-checkers to take action on or label content across the company's services. 22. YouTube also began offering a feature on YouTube beginning in June 2024 that allows users to add notes to provide relevant, timely, and understandable context on videos. The pilot is available on mobile in the US and in English, and YouTube continues to collect feedback on the feature. YouTube also features an extensive comment section where viewers can comment and share their views on content posted by creators. 23. The company terminated channels for repeatedly violating its community guidelines on elections integrity content through 2023 and COVID-19 content through 2024.
Keep going. Are you there?
Sorry, I was kind of choking there.
Oh, okay. No, you're good.
Today, YouTube's community guidelines allow for a wider range of content regarding COVID-19 and elections integrity. Reflecting the company's commitment to free expression, YouTube will provide an opportunity for all creators to rejoin the platform if the company terminated their channels for repeated violations of COVID-19 elections integrity policies that are no longer in effect. YouTube values conservative voices on its platform.
Oh, fucking time. They sure as hell didn't over the last 4 years. I'm still mad about that.
And recognizes that these creators have extensive reach and play an important role in civic discourse. The company recognizes these creators are among those shaping today's online consumption, landing must-watch interviews, giving viewers the chance to hear directly from politicians, celebrities, business leaders, and more. Regulatory landscape. Transparency regarding government interactions with private companies is essential for fostering public trust and upholding the principle of free expression. Laws around the world affect the availability of content across Alphabet's products and services, and the company publishes data in its quarterly transparency report regarding content removal requests in an effort to inform discussions about online content regulation. 26. Governments and law enforcement entities make legal requests in an effort to moderate content according to their views, and their demands come with significant penalties for non-compliance. Alphabet has a track record of pushing back against overly broad or otherwise inappropriate government demands for user data and content removals, including objecting to some demands entirely.
Now, I'll be fair. I'm going to give Google some credit here. I'll be fair. Back when I caught my case for when being involved with the whole anonymous thing, and what happened with what we did, one of my co-defendants, Benny Hadgelov, told me that, see, I had my email. The way they got us was through some emails, but he told me that Google informed him when the FBI requested his emails. So he at least, but they did inform him, but they let him know that the FBI was onto him, so he got a heads up. I didn't, because my email was through Cox Cable, and so I didn't get that same notification. But he was telling me about that, so I'll give Google props on that. At least they notified their user, so that's partially true. So they do have a record of pushing back. I'll give them that.
27. The committee has taken important investigative steps to highlight that onerous obligations under laws, such as the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, may stifle innovation and restrict access to information. These laws place a disproportionate regulatory burden on American companies, and the company has long expressed its concern about the risk that the DSA may pose to freedom of expression within and outside of the European Union, depending on how certain provisions may be enforced. The DSA could be interpreted in such a way as to require Alphabet and other providers of intermediary services to remove lawful content, jeopardizing the company's ability to develop and enforce global policies that support rights to free expression and access to information.
You there? You're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. The DSA may open avenues for substantive regulation of lawful speech, including through risk mitigation, the use of codes of conduct and crisis protocols, and the out-of-court dispute settlement mechanism. Alphabet remains mindful of these risks and continues to be vigilant in its defense of these rights. Waiver 28. In providing this information, the company does not waive, nor does it intend to waive, any of its rights or privileges, including any applicable attorney-client, work product, or other evidentiary privilege, or any objection to the committee's requests or the subpoenas. The representations herein are based on reasonably available information and are not intended to, and do not, capture all information related to the committee's requests or the subpoenas, nor are they an exhaustive description of the information discussed. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, Daniel Donovan, counsel for Alphabet. The Honorable Jamie Raskin, Ranking Member Aaron K. Hulse, Esquire.
That's who was carbon copies. Who was carbon copies of those other emails. It looks like. So yeah. So that's the last story we have for the night, and then we'll just discuss, and then we'll wrap it up. So that's breaking news. Those are some big stories that we need to acknowledge and cover. And folks, we need to take a step back and remind ourselves and recognize when we're being gaslit by the media, articles, anything. We have to be using discernment and question when we're being emotionally triggered. And so when I find words like climate change deniers or other buzzwords like that in articles, it kind of you kind of lose me there. And that's when I start to be okay, I'm not even going to take this seriously because they're using that shit. I'm like, it's hard for me to take anything seriously when you have that kind of shit going on. So I encourage everybody to really be objective about it. Where is the data?
Well,
the actual data, not the spin, is how I would put it.
And it was it was the use of such words in regards to Charlie Kirk that
exactly
caused so many
my point was. That was my point.
To have a knee-jerk reaction that made them happy when this man was killed instead of seeing it as a tragedy that it is. And you may disagree with him politically, you may disagree with him religiously, but he was always a person who disagreed in a way that was civil and through dialogue. And if you can't be civil in your dialogue, then understand that there's something in your brain that's triggering you to act in an uncivil way. And if you're acting in an uncivil way, then you are being the problem at that moment. Now, the cure for that is to recognize something's triggering me, and I'm responding without thinking. And I need to think things through for myself, get away from the propaganda that's made me triggered and made me think along these lines that cause me not to reason. And I need to reason it through apart from that. I'm brainwashed. You have to realize each of us are brainwashed by the environment around us, by the things we choose to listen to. Like I had these theories about Kirk. I'm like, oh, it was the lavalier mic. That's what it was. There was a bullet in there.
I was like, Robin, dude, no, it doesn't match. I was trying to explain it to him how the angle didn't match the freaking the wound exit. If they're claiming it went in this side from the and the mic is right here, dude, that didn't. I was like, no, dude, that doesn't explain it. I was saying it's compression cavity. So I didn't use the exact terminology that the guy in the video did that we showed earlier, but I was trying to make that point. From my knowledge of physics, I'm like, Robin, the physics don't add up. It doesn't make sense. That's not how bullets work. And I know enough about physics, and I'm not saying ballistics per se, and that's why we showed that video. But he did a good, I did have enough knowledge of physics myself because I do a lot of code work and I create virtual environments that simulate physics in a lot of ways. So I know how trajectory and how velocity and vectors work, and I use that a lot. And so my knowledge of that, and like I was telling him, the bullet displaced all this matter inside his neck, and it has to go. So all the energy has to go somewhere. And as we saw in the video, his whole chest cave, went up, and just for a fraction of a second, but it did. That's where the energy went.
And I'm thinking explosion outside the shirt that blows the shirt up. What I didn't realize was that the explosion was inside him. That blew him up, and that's what blew the shirt up. And
basically, folks, from what he was describing, assuming that second shooter location is correct based on the angle and the fact that we have no exit wound based on the video evidence, it makes sense. And in that scenario, his whole chest cavity would have been exploded, his heart, everything, it would have been gone, and that would have explained the bleeding as well. So that's why we've come to that conclusion. I think that's the best explanation we have. I do believe that there's a connection to the Epstein thing somewhere, and I think we need to do some more digging. And I don't entirely trust the FBI. I think they're doing good with some of the stuff that they're dropping about the January 6th thing. They need to keep on that track, but they're not out of the water yet. We're watching, and FBI, you need to give us a better explanation than the Tyler Robinson shooter, because at this point, I'm convinced it's Mossad CIA.
Yeah, as long as there are these centers of power that exercise so much power and so much influence. That, I mean, if you're talking Israeli Mossad, basically my understanding from what little I've studied about the intelligence community is
they're
that
no one to fuck with. They will kill you.
No one to mess with, and they can get to anybody if they really want to.
And that's a scary thought, because they're more powerful. I think at some level they're even more powerful than CIA.
That includes our American leaders. I mean, these are people that Trump may be afraid of. These are people that the high level of our government may truly live in fear of, because for one thing, it is this massive worldwide intelligence information gathering, but also execution organization. And they execute their enemies, and that's just, that's basically historical fact.
Yeah.
So,
What we knew from the JFK files release, we know the CIA was involved in his assassination, so it makes sense that Mossad would also be. I mean, we know that Mossad does assassinate. I mean, I'm not. Let's not be. Anybody that's watched NCIS knows, have seen the episodes with Ziva. Okay, that should be enough to give you a good idea of freaking how scary they can actually be. That's just a fraction of a percent of fucking how scary they actually are.
yeah,
But in Hollywood.
if you and I know that these are scary people, then the people that are really frightened of them really know.
Right. So, anyways, that's my stance on the whole curly Kirk thing at
Folks,
this
thanks
point, based
for
on the
tuning in
ballistics.
for our 2 cents worth. I'm Robin Austin with MediaNow.world. When you can't trust the mainstream media, it falls to citizen journalists like us to tell you the truth. And that's our job. We are Media Now World and News4us World.
Good night, everybody. I'll be putting the sources in the comments of X as soon as we end the live. So be on the lookout for that, folks. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks.